Hey, welcome to Mooney Reads. My name is Beck, and today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I got in the month of June. The majority of the books that I got this month were nonfiction, but I did get a few fiction as well. I'm going to go ahead and start with the first book that I got this month, which was Beyond the Gender Binary by Alok Menon. I've already talked about this book several times on my channel, and it just came out at the beginning of the month. This is their newest book, and it was absolutely fantastic. I can put a link to the video where I talk about this a bit more. It's a really small book, but there's a ton packed in here that was just really wonderful. Next, I have a poetry book, The Black Condition, featuring Narcissus by J. Dodd. J. Dodd has poems in a number of different publications, and this was one of her books, so I went ahead and got it. I'm pretty sure I read that it was autobiographical, but there is also a lot of mythology imagery, so I'm not, I guess, 100% sure on what it's going to be like, but I'm really looking forward to reading this in July. The next book I have is fiction, and that is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. My dad works with publishing and gets copies of books occasionally, and this was one of the ones that he got a while back. He's read it, so now I get it. And I'm super excited about it. I've really been wanting to read N.K. Jemisin. For those who don't know, The City We Became is fantasy, and within this, each piece of New York is represented by a different character. I'm not totally sure what happens plot-wise, but I'm okay with keeping it that way. I know that it goes into different perspectives, which sounds super interesting. And hopefully after I get done with this, I can borrow the 5th season, which my sister has currently. It's gonna be a great time. The next stack of books that I have, I got at Barnes & Noble. This is the first time I'd been to a bookstore since everything shut down. I went in there for specific books, but of course I came out with more. So the first book I've got is Memoir by Sarah Blake. I had actually ordered this in maybe February. It wasn't supposed to come in until April, and of course everything was shut down in April, so I was able to pick it up when I went shopping this month. I've been pretty excited to get to this book. I heard both Bowties and Books and Sage Reads talk about it. It's basically a biblical retelling of Noah's wife from the Noah's Ark story. And she isn't really focused on in the actual text, so this kind of delves into her character. It's very queer and very metaphysical, so I'm really interested to see what this is like. The next book that I got that I did plan on buying was The Source of Self-Regard by Toni Morrison. This is a collection of speeches and essays and different things like that. I have read Sula by Toni Morrison and I really enjoyed it. So I'm excited to get to some of her nonfiction stuff. This is actually the group read for the Fuckathon, which is hosted by Noria Reads. I'll put links to that in the description if you're interested. The next book I technically also got for the Fuckathon, but I was planning on getting it anyways, and that is The Henna Wars. I would be really surprised if you hadn't heard about The Henna Wars already. It is a young adult novel. It's got sort of an enemies to lovers romance. There's also a discussion of cultural appropriation that's really interesting. This book just sounds super adorable, and there was no way that I couldn't get it. Just looking at that cover, it's just really beautiful. So I'm super excited to get to this in July as well. Next, I got Open Season, Legalized Genocide of Colored People by Ben Crump. This book was suggested by Jesse from Bowties and Books. It looks at Ben Crump's experience as an attorney, and in general looking at the history of how Black people have been treated by the criminal justice system. Ben Crump was the lawyer for Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, and some other prominent cases, and I believe he's also going to be the attorney for different things going on with George Floyd. The next two that I got, I was pleasantly surprised to see. Both of these were originally published a while back, and I hadn't seen these in a physical bookstore, and I tend to look pretty heavily at the social science section. So the first one of those is Women, Race, and Class by Angela Davis. This was originally published in the early 80s, and like the title would imply, she looks at sort of the intersections of all of these. And then I have Killing the Black Body, Race, Reproduction, and the Meaning of Liberty by Dorothy Roberts. And this looks at the history of how Black women have been treated, kind of starting really far back, around colonization and slavery up until it was published in the 1970s. Both of these have been on my radar for a long time, and I'm glad that I was able to find them, and I'm really glad that they have started to put in kind of a more diverse selection of books, particularly in the social science section. The next couple books I got online just during various times. Both of these next books were actually suggested by Brianna from Brianna's Library, so if you are at all interested in books like these that are nonfiction and politically oriented, definitely check out their channel. The first one of those is Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton. Huey Newton was one of the co-founders of the Black Panther Party, and this is his autobiography. Next is Live from Death Row by Mumia Abu-Jamal. This is a collection of prison essays. He wrote these while he was on death row. From my understanding, this really gets into what it's like to live on death row, but also the conditions that these people are living in. The next couple of stacks that I had came from places that had sales going on. The first couple are from the University of Chicago Press, and the first one of these is also a recommendation from Brianna's Library, and that is Red Star Over the Third World, and this looks at a number of different revolutionary movements that happened in the Global South. And then the other book that I got from University of Chicago Press is The War on Drugs in the Global Color Line, edited by Kojo Karam, and this looks at the impact that the war on drugs has all over the world. So this is a collection of articles and essays that each look kind of at different parts of the world and how drug trafficking is impacting a multitude of countries. Then the final three books that I have, I got from Duke University Press. The first is Intersectionality as Critical Theory by Patricia Hill Collins. I've talked about Patricia Hill Collins a little bit before. I always highly recommend Black Feminist Thought by Patricia Hill Collins. Really, that book should be essential for anyone who's interested in feminism. It's also pretty accessible language-wise for the most part. So I'm interested to see what she has to say in Intersectionality as Critical Theory. This was more recently published, and this is kind of taking a step further. It's not just talking about intersectionality and what it is, but how to actually apply that. So I'm really looking forward to this. I'm planning on reading it in July. Next, I have Poor Queer Studies, Confronting Elitism in the University by Matt Brim. From my understanding, this is going to be looking at how schools are not accessible to a number of people, specifically through a poor and queer lens. And I imagine it's going to talk about specific things that should change in higher education and different ways that we could do it. I thought that this was particularly important for me to read since I am working in higher education. I'm an adjunct at a college, and I'm also considering getting my PhD, so I think that knowing and understanding this perspective is going to be super important. And then finally, I have Black Queer Studies, A Critical Anthology by Patrick Johnson and May Henderson. I got this book because I was actually looking at a more recent book that I believe was published by the same people, but it was described as almost like a follow-up or more recent version of this book. So I wanted to get that book, but I decided to go ahead and get this book so that I could read it first, and then once I'm done with this, go on ahead and get the next one. And this is looking in an interdisciplinary way at the experience of Black queer people. So those were all of the physical books that I got in July. I did get a lot of ebooks. There were a number of places that were having sales where certain ebooks were like $2.99. I also got a hold of some PDFs and ebooks for free. I'm not going to go into each and every one of those because that would take a really long time, but I will put a few on the screen. I did end up getting some fiction books, and then I got a number of books also that were nonfiction. There were a number of books on policing specifically that were free from Verso. There were also a number of books that were inexpensive or free on racial injustice. And I ended up getting a couple of romance books because I wanted to try those out next month, which I talk a little bit about in my TBR video. If you've read any of the books that I bought this month, definitely tell me what you thought about them down in the comments, and thank you all so much for watching. Bye!